Hi, it's Jackie Schomburg. Today is another instance of my 100 Days of Simple Collage 100-day project. The quest continues. I will hit all 100 of these collages. Mark my words. Today I want to focus specifically on bold composition choices and how to really make an impact with the choices and the selection of what you put where in a collage. These are all simple collages, so there's only a few pieces of collage paper in each collage. So it seemed to be a great opportunity to talk about impact because the 3 pieces you pick, or the 5 pieces that you pick, really all influence what the collage looks like. There's no halfway point. There's very little subtlety, and especially the pieces I chose because, I mean, look behind me. I don't really like subtlety in all things, but value is something that I use a lot in deciding my compositions. So what's the lightest light and the darkest dark, and then the shades in between. So I'm going to talk about that today as we go through the next few collages in my 100-day project. I like to start out with several pieces of paper just laid out so that I can move pieces around and not just focus on one collage at a time. Since I'm well beyond my 100-day project actual timeline, that project ended months ago, I think. I'm going for the bulk system at this point, but it helps me lay things out so that I can keep them going around in my subconscious and not have to keep track of all of them only in my mind. So I'm digging through some of my collage stashes to pull out some pieces that are interesting to me today, and we'll begin laying them out on these 4x6 cards. It's just mixed media paper. So I think it's Strathmore. These are large pieces that I cut down to 4x6 size. And this is just a bag from some purchase. I think I purchased a card. There's a little paper bag for that. And that's how easy it can be to make collage paper. So if you have some plain paper that you just set aside, take a China marker, make some marks on it, and move on. Isn't it funny how with all of my collage paper that I literally have, 4 bins of smaller scraps like these, but then I also have, boxes of magazines and whatnot that I still needed to make that one piece of paper for this one. One of the reasons I like adding that white crayon or that white grease pencil mark to the manila bag is that it really brings forth that light value. So now there's white in that. I'm talking about the purple one with the, large brownish tan piece on the upper row. There's not much that's light about that, anything that I added except for that white line. But that white line ties it in with all the rest of the white on the outside. The way that I've found to be most impactful with especially simple collages is to make sure you have something very dark, make sure you have something very light, and then the other pieces that you choose, find differences. So if every piece is cut out with scissors, have one piece be torn, a torn edge to soften it. If every piece is botanical, there's flowers or grasses or trees or something like that, add a section of printed type, or like a very much a straight line, and that could be a cut edge of something, or it could also be a machine made line, like a printed logo that has lots of straight lines in it. Here I'm adding red. So red can also be very impactful. especially with black and white. Red is actually a very dark value. So if I put this in black and white, that red would probably look pretty black. And I have the torn edges of the red. I'm adding this type from a magazine paragraph, which also has a torn edge and some straight edges. There's number 61. And I'm hoping it's becoming clear that I really focus on the differences. Now, of course, I would like to like the differences that they are. I'm not going to take like, but I mean, you could take three pieces you find really pretty and then one piece you find ugly and do that. That would technically work, and it would probably be very interesting. However, I find that making things that are more objectively different, right? Purple and yellow, very different colors. They're actually opposites on the color wheel. So they're complementary colors, which is always interesting and always a pretty bold choice. Our eyes are drawn to contrasts. So the farther apart in value or in color or in texture something is that's right next to something else so that it's kind of its opposite, that's where our eyes are drawn. So right now, we're probably all looking at the yellow and the purple right where they meet together, because that's the biggest contrast on that page right now. Black and white is the biggest contrast you can have. So that's a really simple way to grab attention. And having things that are very close in color can allow room for having very subtle changes that still provide an impact. It's hard to create an impact as much as that purple and yellow combination with subtle things. However, if you find subtle differences, so the red and teal in that bottom right-hand corner, those are also opposites on the color wheel. But since both of those colors are a tiny bit less saturated than the purple and yellow are like, they're on blast, right? Those are very bright colors. The other ones aren't as bright, so the contrast is a little bit less bold. And now I just put some tissue paper over it with some Celadon, and that softened that contrast even a little bit more. So number 62, just by definition of how I use the complementary colors there, is going to be less of a bold statement than the purple and yellow one. It's not a judgment against it or for it. It's just what it is. It's less contrast. So your eye, if those are two collages were next to each other, your eye would be drawn to the purple and yellow one first, whether you liked it or not, right? Whether it's not that it's more attractive or less attractive. It's just that the impact of the bright colors kind of bouncing off of each other is one that will draw your attention. The other thing to do is to find interesting shapes. In this case, those little lines with the dots that kind of to me look like little smiley faces, those I thought were really cool because it's a fairly plain background, and the lines on them, because the background is so plain and untextured, really pop out. So it's a quiet space with two lines and two dots, and that alone, paired well with something darker perhaps, will draw your eye in. Obviously black and white, classic combination of attention grabbery. Is that a word? I don't know. That's not really a thing. So do you see how when I put the white piece with the two lines on the bottom row next to the dark black, it pops more than it was just on white paper? Adding a little bit of metallic gold there on that yellow piece. Give it a little razzle dazzle. I really like how that one turned out. Spoiler alert. The size of what you're using also changes how the composition looks. If you put 4 pieces of paper that are all the same size, they're all squares of the same size, even if all the colors and textures are different, is going to give a different impression than if you used 4 different sized squares. The 4 different sized squares will be more interesting, probably, all else equal, than 4 squares the same size. So another thing I'm looking for as I'm going through these collage scraps is finding different sized pieces to fit together. And even though the piece I'm working on right now, those 3 scraps I'm working with aren't incredibly different shapes and sizes, the way I'm overlapping them does force them to look different, right? Because no one sees the original pieces that you are using. They see what they can view from the art itself. I was really liking these little gold accents, a little bit of metallic gold. I thought that was a nice bridge between the orange and the paper bag color. So changing the shape of things so they're a bit different makes them more interesting. All right, you're going to have to take my word for it that this one gets made. I'll show you at the end. As I was adding the thicker black and teal piece, I had to break out my gel, and my gel was totally gelled to itself. I had left the cap off for too long, so it's up in the right-hand corner now, and I'll show you at the end. I was glad to have that second piece, though, of those little squiggly lines and dots. So here you can see the piece I'm working for now, that became my lucky quadrant. But that piece, those pieces together, you can see that the textures are so different with that squiggly line, the black line on the white paper. It provides something so different than the full color pieces. This is an old jelly printed paper. And that squiggle breaks things up so nicely. I really liked that. It separates the 2 color blocks. It helps me change the size of that blue piece, so it's just a little sliver at the top. I really like how that one came together. So it turned into a big rectangle, but the colors and the shapes and the textures in there are so different and interesting. And a tiny bit of gold, I think that was what that was. This lower right-hand section really became my lucky spot as I was making these. I'm not sure why, but you can see how the other ones stay stagnant. And that is the hot spot where the new collages graduate from. And even the order you put the paper in, you can tell the difference between having that white lined, it's part of an old to-do list, against the white versus when I had it on the red, and how much more it sticks out when it's on the red. Now I loved that the lines connected with the line on the red sheet right there, orange sheet. That's just a personal joy of mine. I love it when things go together like that. I was really trying to make it even punchier with that black and white. And as I'm sitting here watching this, I did not make this video that long ago, but I cannot remember how it turned out. So I am on the edge of my seat too, trying to figure out if I did that. And I did, look at that. Just a little bit of black and white peeking out. As the paper's thicker and thinner, it just takes a little bit more babysitting to make sure it sticks down. Otherwise, on the thicker paper, the edges will, I wouldn't say curl up, but they just don't stay down. So bold lines, lots of space, black and white high contrast, and then something so differently textured is that little tissue paper piece I put down. It really rounds everything out. Your eye has somewhere to go to look on all parts of that little collage. I had so much fun making these. I hope you enjoyed watching my process and understanding a bit more. Hopefully it was helpful to hear how and why I make my choices when I'm using the different collage scraps. Let me know what your favorite collage materials to use are. Do you like magazines? Do you make your own paper? Do you use found objects? I would love to know in the comments.